We begin the day with German Taurus cruise missiles. They could be headed for the Ukrainian military, but they're not. Today, Germany's parliament voted against sending Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine. Opposition lawmakers, they had called today's vote, and they want the German government to deliver the long-range Taurus missiles to Ukraine. But Chancellor Olaf Scholz and his government have stood in the way, arguing that the missiles could escalate the war if Ukraine were to use them to strike targets deep inside Russian territory. Well, Germany has become, as we said, the biggest European supplier of weapons to Ukraine after the U.S., and Parliament voted to send more military aid to Kyiv today. But the opposition says that Germany is simply not doing enough.
Ukraine is still not receiving all the material it urgently needs to effectively fight Russia's war of aggression. Dear colleagues of the governing coalition, I ask all of you and not just individuals, I ask all of you to support our motion today and to urge the German government to finally deliver Taurus missiles to Ukraine.
I just want to say one thing, ladies and gentlemen. If you go to the Munich Security Conference, the Defence Ministers meeting in Brussels on NATO, the Asia Security Summit or other international meetings, then you hear one thing again and again. Germany is admired for what it's doing for Ukraine's fight.
Well, I'm joined now by Wolfgang Richter. He is a security analyst with the Geneva Center for Security Policy. He's also a former colonel in the German Armed Forces. Colonel, it's good to have you on the program. It's pretty clear, I think we can say, that the German government doesn't want to talk about Taurus missiles, but we can. Why is there such a clear difference between the Chancellor's position and that of the Conservatives when it comes to sending Taurus missiles to Ukraine?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Brent, to have me on your show. Your question is quite pertinent. The Chancellor has not clearly said why he would not deliver. There is obviously no red line, but there is some hesitancy to deliver these kind of weapons. Maybe one should describe the problems with that weapon to find out what the considerations could be. First, it's an air-delivered long-range weapon that has to be technically adapted to Ukrainian aircraft. That has been possible, at least as far as the British and French Storm Shadow and Scalp cruise missiles were concerned. However, the range of this Taurus missile is far higher than the one I just mentioned. It is a range of 500 kilometers. It strikes or could strike deeply into behind enemy lines, but also deeply into the Russian territory if these restrictions are not observed. And it has a very redundant guidance system, which makes the weapon a very precise one, which is resilient against electronic countermeasures, which has data linked with satellites even during the flight, which makes the weapon or brings the weapon in a position even to circumvent air defense if recognized in the last minute.
Well, Colonel,
the question here is...
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this question. Do you think that the Taurus missiles, do you think that this is just a case of not sending them now, but that they will probably or maybe be sent to Ukraine in the future?
I would not exclude that this would happen, but at the moment, all these data and qualities of the weapon, which I just mentioned, of course, pose also risks. One of the risks is that striking targets deeply into Russian territory could, of course, lead to reactions that we do not wish to happen, escalatory reactions. It would then bring up the questions why Germany, as a non-nuclear country, would take more risks than the nuclear countries, UK and France, with a geographical peripheral position in Europe. And the question then is, of course, what would be the result if this weapon would, for example, be used against the Bridge of Kerch? It is true to say it can strike against logistics of the Russian side, but it is also true to consider the possible risks involved with that. And I would also want to believe that the question, which is now focusing on one weapon system, could mean that this weapon would be a game changer. It is not. We have seen that with Scalp and Storm Shadow. It is an asset, but it cannot change the war, because the war will be decided on a combined arms battle approach with a lot of weapon systems the Ukrainians need. Most, of course, ammunition, artillery, air defense assets, and also combat vehicles on the ground.
Colonel, let me ask, if I could get your assessment of how things have changed in the last 2 years. You know, the debate we saw in Parliament today here in Berlin was about German support for Ukraine 2 years into this war. Germany is the biggest supplier of weapons to Ukraine other than the United States. Would you say that Germany is doing all that it can do to help this ally, Ukraine?
I believe that Germany does a lot, as the defense minister has explained today, delivered in terms of financial support, in terms of weapon support. Don't forget that Germany, in the meantime, has delivered more than 100 tanks, Leopard 2 and Leopard 1, and dozens of artillery systems, of air defense systems of all sorts. Of course, also ammunition, also combat vehicles on the ground. That means, all in all, that's a lot, and this is what is needed for a combined arms battle which is fought in Ukraine. We should not make the mistake to believe that one single weapon system would be a game changer. I think as far as Germany is concerned, a lot was delivered from the storage sites Germany has, and you are aware that at the same time, NATO and Germany, as part of NATO, has to beef up the forces for the defense of allies and own defense, which is a competing requirement. And here is the problem, to get the industries to work and to double efforts, which is not just can be done by pushing a button. That is a long-term process.
I want to ask you about what the German Defense Minister, Boris Pistorius, said today. He referred to the political parties on the left and the far right as being Moscow's fifth columns. Is there any doubt in your mind about the commitment of the German political mainstream, the center, when it comes to supporting Ukraine?
I personally have no doubt that the mainstream center in Germany, that means the coalition parties and the main opposition party, would stand behind the support of Ukraine and to continue whatever is possible for Ukraine. On the other hand, I find it a very extreme position to tell the other opposition parties that they are fifth columns of the Russian side. I think this is an exaggeration that is due to the heated political debate. But I think this is not the case. I think that these parties are rather concerned about the question whether Ukraine can sustain the war, whether there is a reliable and realistic a victory strategy, or whether this strategy would lead to a lot of suffering and more losses on the Ukrainian side without achieving what Zelensky said, that is full regaining of the full territorial integrity of Ukraine.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Colonel Wolfgang Richter with the Geneva Center for Security Policy. Colonel, we appreciate your time and your analysis tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.